Hey guys, welcome back to a Study in Truth podcast. Join Mitchell and I today as we continue to discuss the existence of God. So today we're picking back up in the discussion of the existence of God. Last week we basically looked at all the options for the existence of everything and why it's here or how it got here. We looked at the spontaneous generation theory. We looked at the eternal universe theory and how that science disproves all those. So if you're listening to this one and haven't listened to the first, probably go back and listen to that first. So we're looking at today the three arguments for God's existence. We do not believe that God exists based on a feel-good feeling or some sort of emotional basis. It's all logical and it's all scientific as well. And we're going to talk about that too. We're going to look at the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, and the moral argument. These three things prove God exists. And again, if you're an atheist listening, I can't talk today. If you're an atheist listening, please feel free to reach out to us and discuss this even more.
Absolutely.
These things are controversial to talk about and maybe unbelievable to you, but we encourage you just to set aside preconceived notions, to set aside even emotion, and just think about all of this logically. And if you're a Christian, if you don't know these arguments, you really need to know these arguments. These are so important. Again, like we said in the first episode, don't have a faith that is based on emotion or no evidence. Make sure it's evidence-based. Make sure it's real. It means the orderly arrangement or the universe. In fact, it's actually used a lot in the Bible when you see the word world. It comes from the Greek cosmos. And then you see logia, which is a Latin word meaning the study of something. So this is the study of the world or the universe. This argument basically states that the universe had to come from something that transcends time, space, and matter. Mitchell, what kind of scientific experiments or laws back this up?
Well, you got the first law of thermodynamics. You've got the basic law of cause and effect. I mean, that's a basic law, and it's also a scientific law because it's pretty common sense and common knowledge that I think it plays off of Newton's. I can't remember if it's the third. Every action has an equal and positive reaction, or an equal and opposite reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's basically where you get the law of cause and effect, where everything has some source because of that reliance on time that we have in this dimension that we have covered in the last episode.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, this is backed up by science. The first law of thermodynamics basically states that energy can't be created or destroyed, meaning the energy we have today, the light, the electricity, whatever it may be, has to have something that exists outside of it to create it, or it wouldn't exist. And you just described the law of cause and effect. Very good there.
It is the third law. Okay. Good.
Third law. Okay. This is not only scientifically accurate. This is, as we've been saying so much, and hopefully we're not sounding redundant, but it's very logical. It's very logical to say that if there's a universe, if there's something here, if there's life here, there had to be something that exists outside of it to put it here, because it can't create itself. It just doesn't work that way. I like what this guy said. He's a German philosopher, Immanuel Kant. This was in 1781, but I mean, somebody may think this is outdated, but these things are eternal truths. But he said everything that happens presupposes a previous condition, which it follows with absolutely certainty in conformity with a rule. All changes take place according to the law of connection of cause and effect. Now, this is backed by an actual philosopher, someone who knows what they're talking about. This doesn't just come from me. And the Bible basically gives us the answers to time, space, and matter, first cause, and energy. If you look at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3, if you want to read those two verses for us, Mitchell, Genesis 1 and 3.
So we've got, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Okay, so in the beginning, what is that? What's that?
That would be time.
Okay, and then you've got God, or the heavens and the earth. That would involve space and matter. You've got light, which would be energy. And then what's the first cause? Well,
God created.
God created, or God said. There's your big bang right there. I mean, that's the big bang. God opened his mouth, and whatever he said happened. That literally gives us the answers to all of this. Evolution can't explain the origin of time, space, and matter, and energy. I mean, as far as I know, we could be misrepresenting. I mean, I don't want to misrepresent anyone, but as far as I know, there is no provable, or at least attempted proven, origin of all of this, from what I understand. But the Bible explains all of it. This is really the only logical explanation. And because there's really no other explanations, it's really foolish, I mean, to be honest, to say there's no creator behind the universe. If you look at everything, and we'll look at design in just a moment, but I mean, like me and Kimberly were just walking out today, enjoying the sunshine. It's starting to warm up now that it's almost springtime. When you just look at everything around you, it's so hard. It's just almost impossible to look at it and say there's no God. Something happens to someone in their lifetime to force them in some way to make them not believe in God. I mean, something, because we were actually watching a debate. I'll put this debate on the link tree, but Kyle Butt was debating, I think his name is Michael Shermer, and even he was admitting that children are made, or, well, he wouldn't say made, they come with this given understanding that there's a God, that they basically just accept it. Like there's just knowledge that comes in you that someone put me here. And they did several tests. I don't know exactly. I don't know all that was involved in this, but like, let's say you raise kids on an island. You take care of them. You don't get too involved. You don't teach them anything. They're probably going to grow up thinking someone put them there. I mean, as long as they have a decent life. So something has to happen to an atheist for them to not think there's a God. Most of the time it's maybe abuse or suffering. And we try to be empathetic with those situations, but everybody pretty much gets this.
Yeah. Like this, the basic, I mean, that's why it is in the third law, Newton's third law, but it's also kind of that common sense of like cause and effect. Like you learn that. That's one of the earliest things you learn. You learn, oh, I cry, I get fed. Oh, okay. So I'm going to keep doing that cause so I get that effect. But then you get that kind of that spiteful, and this isn't to say that everybody who doesn't believe in God is a spiteful person, but a lot of the time with the, and we'll get into this morality in a bit, but they feel like that it's too unjust and that they get spiteful that, oh, there can't be a God because of all these bad things. And that even then, honestly, the way I think of it is then I would think, oh, somebody's punishing me. And that's a hard thing to face, especially with the concept of God. Yeah, for sure. And we're definitely going to talk more about, I was trying to look up this quote, but we're definitely going to talk more about that as we go throughout this season. I was trying to find this article. I don't want to misquote this or misrepresent this. If I don't find it right away, I will share it in the link tree. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that right now to do this. Which one was it?
It's a quote from, I think it was an atheist. It might have been Richard Dawkins. It was one of these guys that said it's almost as if children are designed to believe in a designer or something like that, or a creator. And I cannot think of who said it. That happens a lot. But that's awfully interesting that children just automatically get it almost. They just think that. So as we just have been discussing, something happens to someone to rid themselves of logic and to make them believe there is no God. So all of this is easily explained, not only with the Bible, but with logic and science. And I mean, the Bible even says it itself in Psalm 14 and verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Because it's foolish to see all of this, to look at everything you see, to see the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, all of it, and say, well, obviously nobody made this. I mean, that's just, I mean, I hate to say that, but it's foolish. It's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at Psalm 19. I'll read this one. The Bible even makes a logical argument about God. If you don't know this, the Bible actually makes the cosmological argument. In Psalm 19 and verse 1, it says, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their utterances to the end of the world. In them he has placed a tent for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices as a strong man to run his course. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. And we could keep on reading, but that's basically telling us the point that the Bible makes the cosmological argument. Mm-hmm. Romans 1 and verse 20. Do you want to read that one for us?
Yeah. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse.
Okay, so this ultimately tells us you can't stand there on Judgment Day, even if you don't believe in a judgment. You can't stand there on Judgment Day and say, God, you didn't give me any evidence of your existence, because Paul tells us there is no excuse. And that's quite interesting that we can understand or see God's eternal power and his nature in nature. That's kind of interesting. You can actually see the attributes of God. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that in the second point, but you can see his power just by all of the things that are created. I mean, it had to take some power to put it here.
It takes like just, I'd like to think about like just the genius, like the intricate knowledge that God would have about the world that he created, because we have such a limited amount of knowledge but we as humans, we like to think, oh, we know it all about the universe. Yeah. And like even the level-headed scientists and atheists and or evolutionists will acknowledge they don't know everything. But then you look at things that humans have made, like these computers that we have in front of us. Like these are a lot like a very, 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 very primitive brain. I mean, you've got processors in here that can do millions of calculations a second, and yet it doesn't even come close. Like even the supercomputers that we have now barely even scratch the surface of being able to compare to a human brain with its billions of neurons and like electrical connections. And I'm never, not once, I'm going to look at anything in this room that is obviously man-made and be like, dang, I bet somebody said whoops when that just happened. Like, you're not going to be able to look at these things and be like, that was an accident that just kind of happened to fall into place after given enough amount of time. I like to think of the argument about if you take a box, all right, put it in the middle of an empty galaxy, no cosmic rays, no interference at all. You take it, it's a closed system. You take all the ingredients for a cake, you put an oven in there and give it a power source. If you shake that box up, no matter how many billions of trillions of years happen, like this is an easy refutation of the monkey typewriter theory. No matter how long you wait and how much you shake it up and how much energy you put into it, you're never going to end up with a perfectly baked cake. Yeah. Doesn't matter how long it's illogical to think that. And so do you know the
I actually haven't heard that. Is this, now I could be misrepresenting. I'm reading from Wikipedia, so I could be wrong, but is it that a monkey hitting keys at random on a typewriter keyboard for an infinite amount of time will almost surely type any given text, including the complete works of William Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Is that basically it?
That is exactly it. Just think about that. Like, that's like, okay, you have like a certain given amount of inputs on that typewriter. And then if you press it at random enough times and over enough period of time, then okay, yeah, you'll get the complete works of William Shakespeare. And that's such a fallacy to believe in. Like you would think theoretically, okay, how many quadrillion, quintillion years you give it, yeah, it'll happen. But no, you don't have that. And
Mhm.
especially with, okay, you get halfway through the complete works. Oops, typo. And then you got to start over again. That's what I think about like evolution and things like that that don't take into consideration. Oh, if one single mistake happens in that process, you
Mhm.
get nothing close to what we have now, which is the perfect kind of creation of nature. And I didn't mean to go on a rant.
No, you're good.
I got on a roll. But
No, you're good.
being
You're
able
fine.
to see these things and call them an accident or just happenstance, it does not compute.
Yeah, and that leads us into the next verse because again, the Bible doesn't just argue God from an emotional standpoint. I mean, it makes some emotional things about God being good and how experience can help our faith,
Mhm.
but it makes logic the number one argument. It says in Hebrews 3 and verse 4, for every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. And I think about like Biltmore. Have you ever been to Biltmore?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've
like,
never
oh,
been, but I've seen like lots of
awesome.
pictures.
Nobody with a reasonable mind could
Yeah.
walk up to Biltmore, look at it and say, well, man, that's an awesome accident. Like,
Yeah.
however that happened, it's cool. Like it must have just randomly appeared. Well, no, you're going to look at that thing and say, man, somebody built that. That can't have been built by nothing. And we can observe that kind of thing in nature. From nature, we learn that the only reasonable explanation is a creator. I mean, if there's creation, there's a creator. There is creation. Therefore, there is a creator. And this takes us to our next. Oh, did you have a point to make?
Yeah. Real quick. A lot of the times what I hear as a refutation of what we just said is that like, oh, okay, you just can't even fathom the possibility of this. So you are trying to rationalize it by saying it's not possible.
Mm.
But it's just it is unfathomable to think about that. But the key is to go at it not just with like, oh, that can't happen, so I'm not going to think about it. You have to really think it through. And I liked really where was it? It was in the Psalm 19 that we read. Day unto day utter speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. Like this is stuff that you really, even if you think about it for days, nights, time after time, there's no real reason to come to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to address that because that's generally what they revert to is that, oh, okay, you just can't comprehend it. So yeah, it makes sense that you would just think, okay, God did that since I can't understand it.
Yeah, and I get why they say that, but as we said earlier, this is all logic. This is simple logic. If you look at a house, obviously someone built it. You can't look at something even better than a house, an entire universe, and think, "Oh, nothing built that." That's just so unreasonable. Another thing they have a problem with too is I've heard somebody make this argument. I told them, logically, nothing can't make something, and then they asked me, "Well, what did God make the world out of?" And they're like, I used to answer out of nothing. I get that sentence that God made the world out of nothing. I'm going to change that because God didn't make the world out of nothing. He made it out of his power, from his very power. There wasn't nothing that God made the world from. He made it from himself, his very power. He could speak it into existence. And as improbable as that may seem to an atheist, something supernatural, as you've already said, had to put us here.
Yeah.
Something that transcends us. So
I like to think of the idea that Kyle Butt uses this often in his arguments of it, that you are able to take matter, turn it into energy or light, and vice versa.
Mhm.
But it takes so much energy. So God being like just take the Bible out of the equation for a second.
Mhm.
I know. Don't worry. I'm not falling off the deep end here. Take the
No, you're
Bible out of
fine.
the equation just for the sake of argument, and think about just God as a higher dimensional being, because that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's not in the third dimension. He's in fourth, fifth, whichever.
Mhm.
And so him taking just some bit of energy and putting it into the fourth dimension just as easily as we can take a piece of paper
Mhm.
and draw something theoretically in a two-dimensional.
Yeah,
Just create it out of nothing because we just put something into it.
that's good.
That's kind of how I think of it dimensionally.
Mhm.
And the fact that you just like, all right, I'll put some energy in there with this intention, and I'm God, so I know all this and I know how to do it and how to design it.
Mhm.
And then you get matter.
Yeah.
Like, it's just as simple as drawing a picture on a piece of paper as a third dimensional being making 2 dimensions.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's good. I like that. And as we've been talking about, you can see God's power. You can also see God's nature in nature. And I think part of what that means is you can see how intelligent he is.
Yeah.
Part of God's nature is that he is infinite in intelligence. I mean, if you want to know the smartest thing, what's the most intelligent decision, what is the best thing to do, always go to God, because he is infinite in intelligence.
Absolutely.
And that leads us into the second argument, and that's the teleological argument. So let's say you go up to Biltmore and you see the house. Well, just overall, nobody put that there. Somebody had to put it there. Oh, wait, I said that wrong. No,
Switch that.
yeah, let me. Somebody
Fix it in
had to
post.
put that there. You can't just have it appear out of nowhere. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
But then you start getting in there and you look at the woodwork and how I think they have some gargoyles or something, some sort of creatures carved, and
Yeah.
you look at all the beautiful design, the art work that's in there. You don't look at that and say, well, nobody designed that. And that's this argument, the teleological argument. It comes from, again, the Greek word telos, which means purpose, and logia, which is a study of something. So it has to do with the study of the purpose of things. And that means how it's designed, the function of it, the complexity. And if you want to go with this one, what is the teleological argument state?
So it states intelligent design demands an intelligent designer.
Mm-hmm.
We, as an engineer, in our classes, because I'm about to graduate, in our classes, we do what's called
So arrogant.
analysis. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No.
I'm jumping the gun. I got them on the left. All right.
I'm just kidding.
And so we do these things called functional analyses, which is exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, I find that pretty cool because we take things that were 100% man-made, like we just did it on, we've done it on weed eaters. We've done it on things, because I did this as early as high school in my engineering classes. And you would just take something that was man-made and you would break it down and look at it and say, why did they make this design choice? And what does that bring to the table as far as the overall design goes? And the thing is that you don't just have to do this with man-made things. If you start doing this with nature, then you start making the teleological argument that we have here.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I was looking up this syllogism, but I can't find it. But basically, the syllogism in this would be, if there's intelligent design, or if there is intelligent design, there must be an intelligent designer. There is intelligent design, therefore there's an intelligent designer. I may be misrepresenting that a bit, but that's the gist of it all.
Yeah.
And there is intelligent design. We see it all over. And if that's the case, there has to be something or someone, more specifically, that designed all of this. One of the things I want to talk about in design, I think, is probably the coolest thing of all of this, is the exchange that occurs in our lungs. So I have a picture for this. I don't have any links to share with this. You can just Google this, the gas exchange that occurs in lungs. So what happens is air enters your lungs, comes in as oxygen, enters the bloodstream. Once it enters the bloodstream, then there's this gas exchange that occurs, transforming the oxygen to carbon dioxide, then leaves the body. Now, without that interchange that occurs in the bloodstream, a person cannot live more than 5 minutes. You cannot survive without this gas exchange. This is backed up by science and biology or whatever it may be. Someone had to design that. That could not have evolved. That's the opposing theory to creation and design is, well, evolution designed it. Well, think about this logically. If you cannot live more than 5 minutes without this gas exchange occurring, evolution could not have designed this, because evolution has our bodies growing over millions of years. And for all of the lungs and the capillaries, the bloodstream, everything to form, wouldn't have taken an instant.
It would have to. Yeah.
It would have had to, but evolution doesn't say that. Evolution says this occurred over billions of years.
Yep.
And so people couldn't have survived without all that. You cannot live
Yeah.
without this gas exchange.
I'd be very curious to
So-
know what that missing link would look like. Like,
yeah.
you never see in nature, even today, with all these millions of species. Like, I think there's like 7 million different, I can't remember what it is, like land animals.
Hmm.
But you don't see a single like in between like being able to like how I put this, I guess like you see it with like fungi, right? That's
Mhm.
its own class, and it has its own respiratory system, its own food source, and you don't see any sort of cross between some sort of oxygen absorption or CO2 sequestering in
Uh-huh.
plants versus animals. There's no way to have two of them at the same time in the same organism.
Yeah.
You don't see that in nature.
That's good. Yeah.
So that alone, also what I noticed about this is that I'm not saying that humans are as like good as God at
Mhm.
designing things, but I noticed that with this diagram that we have of the CO2 and O2 exchange in
Mhm.
the blood, it looks very similar to heat exchangers. It looks very similar to reverse osmosis filters
Mhm.
and tons of different things. Like these are things that humans designed, and they work better than a lot of other ways you could do things, such as just like heating up a rock and putting it in a bowl of water.
Yeah.
Like, because this is the ultimate design. And so we design things that are mimicking this, and it's
Mhm.
only a fraction of the complexity
Yeah.
of this thing that happened by accident, supposedly.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's a realization. I thought that was really cool.
that is good. Yeah. So basically, since evolution couldn't have done this, again, you can't live longer than 5 minutes, but
Mhm.
this would have taken. I mean, it's like if it would have to be this that evolution created the body, or evolved, and everything came together slowly over billion. Oh, and then the airways and all that just immediately formed.
Yeah.
But everything else was slow. Well, that just doesn't fit with evolution. So that means then the design of all of this would have had to come about rapidly. I mean, it would have had to been instant
Yeah.
for someone to live that, to be able to live. And guess what? Incidentally, we have an answer for that. Genesis 2:7 says, "Then the Lord God formed a man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." There is your rapid
Mhm.
creation of this exchange occurring. I mean, that's the only logical way it could have happened.
Chicken or the egg?
Yes.
Had to be the chicken.
Mhm, yeah.
Egg would have died.
Yeah, there you go. Another one, and you alluded to this earlier, is the brain.
I didn't see that you're gonna go.
Yeah, well, it's all right. I'll probably
Serves me right.
edit everything you said prior to this out. Just kidding. So there's a supercomputer. If it's not the fastest, it's one of the fastest. I think it's the fastest.
I think the Frontier is
The Frontier supercomputer. It can perform up to 1.1 quintillion calculations per second, which is a lot.
That's
Here's what it takes to get this to do that. It takes 400 million watts of electricity per hour to do this. That's a lot of energy. Here we are trying to conserve energy, and
yeah.
that's probably not going to help us conserve energy at all.
I think I can leave the light on after hearing that.
Yeah. That takes a lot of power to make that many calculations. It also takes up the space of 2 tennis courts. So I don't know how big a tennis court is, but I don't know the exact measurements.
House at least.
Yeah, probably. So that's pretty massive. And so here's something interesting about all of this. The brain, which takes up a tiny little skull space, nothing like less than a foot.
Half a cubic foot.
Yeah, something like that. Half a foot.
No, quarter a cubic foot. What am I talking about?
This is a
I
big
just
head.
have a really big head.
Yeah. If you don't know who Mitchell is, he's got a gigantic head. I'm just kidding. Metaphorically too, so smart. No, the human brain is capable of performing those same amounts of calculations. It can perform 1.1 quintillion calculations, although mine's probably in the lesser 100,000s. It's not that smart. But here's the interesting thing. It does not take 400 million watts of electricity per hour to do this. It just takes 12 watts of energy per hour. So let's make this applicable. If you go up to that computer and you see all the things that it can do and how someone designed all of that, and you're like, man, whoever designed this was brilliant to get it to do all of that. But then you look at the brain, which can do the same amount of things, but doesn't take as much power. Something greater than us had to design that. We cannot, I highly doubt if millions of years went by, we could never produce a computer as smart as, or as good as the brain. It may be able to produce as many calculations, but
Doesn't know
400 million down to 12, it's a big jump.
They might get it that small, but you'll never have that ability to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it takes a designer to design that. And that's the universe. You see all the universe, you see the human brain, and it's just amazing to see the things that the brain can do. It's also sometimes embarrassing to see what our brains do too, because we're like, man, you're supposed to be smart. It took a whole lot of intelligence to design the world's fastest supercomputer. So obviously it took someone a lot more intelligent to design our brains.
One person.
Yeah.
Hundreds, probably thousands of people working on that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And here's the interesting thing. The Bible has an answer for that too. Genesis 1, do you want to read this, 26 and 27?
Yeah. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Okay, so we have the answer of where intelligence came from. We can do all of these things, and we're intelligent. I mean, I'm not going to sound cocky saying that. We are intelligent beings. Well, the Bible gives us the answer where we got intelligence from. I'm pretty sure an atheist can't really explain where intelligence and consciousness came from, but the Bible explains it very brilliantly that intelligence comes from intelligence. I mean, it can't come from non-intelligence.
Something I thought about real quick is the one explanation I've heard about where intelligence really came from, other than just like, oh, you were just a monkey, and then one day, oh, hey, I'm alive. Like they equate it to like being whenever you're 3 and you just suddenly gain consciousness. But the one theory that I've really heard, and that's weirdly prevalent, is the stoned ape theory.
Mm-hmm.
And so they think that apes just found mushrooms, which psilocybin mushrooms are A, super rare, and B, generally don't grow where monkeys are found, and except for South America. But that's not where life began.
Yeah.
But they have this idea that they ate a bunch of these psychoactive mushrooms, and that somehow, because regardless of the religious aspect of it, there is evidence that they can create different neural pathways. So they have that ability to create neural pathways, but no matter how many neural pathways you have, you don't get consciousness.
Yeah.
But that's the one prevailing theory that I've heard, is that the stoned ape theory.
Oh, okay. That's the new one to me. I've never heard that before, but that is
still
bizarre.
Full of so many holes.
Yeah, and there's no proof for it. Yeah. So, but there is proof that intelligent design demands an intelligent design. Absolutely. That's logic. That is logic. So, another thing, I didn't have this planned, but I wanted to bring up another one, is the human arm and the hand. Kyle Butt mentioned this in his debate with Dan Barker, which I'll include in the link tree, as he showed a picture of a robotic prosthetic hand or whatever. And I mean, it was a pretty good hand. It could do a lot of neat things. And you look at that hand and you're like, man, whoever designed that was brilliant. Someone had to design that. And then he shows the human arm. And apparently this robotic hand has nothing on the human hand. It cannot even come close to what it can do. Well, if something intelligent designed that robotic hand, someone had to design the intelligent designer of the hand. And it's us, or God. God designed us. And that leads to the question here in just a minute that we'll talk about who designed God. We'll talk about that in a moment. But well, I want to look at one more example, and that's the horseshoe crabs and shorebirds. I think this one's kind of neat. This one just kind of blows my mind about design. I want to read a quote to you. It says, horseshoe crab eggs are like a superfood, explains biologist David Mizrahi, New Jersey's Audubon's vice president for research and monitoring. They're easy to find, easy to digest, and they're filled with fat, which is exactly what migratory birds need. And the birds need a lot of them. For thousands of years, the key to shorebird success in Delaware Bay was the sheer number of crabs that came ashore at once, each new wave of the animals digging up and making available billions of previously buried eggs. The birds need the right food in the right place at the right time and in the right abundance, emphasizes Niles. So what he's telling us here is it is not random. These shorebirds, these migratory birds, are flying over, and just at that time, when they need food, it's at that moment they need food, or there's something that they can actually eat. And apparently, other options aren't going to be as good for them. They need these eggs. Well, who designed all of that? I mean, it didn't just come from nowhere. Somebody had to design all of this to make sure these birds are fed, and it's just amazing to see that. And you had something to say, I think, about that too.
Yeah. So before we started, I did a little research real quick on the idea of genetic memory, and that's really what it would rely upon. That idea of genetic memory, because it's only theorized. There's absolutely no scientific evidence for this. But that the only way that they would be able to know, or even any other migratory animal or just animal instinct, that like it's this behavior not based upon senses.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that it would make sense is if it's passed genetically, because where else would they get it? Right. Of course there's no God. So therefore they had to, then there's no, higher being kind of playing into this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That means that, okay, it had to be passed down. You would have the idea of the Darwinian, or what is it? There's a phrase for, it's not, I guess it is just survival of the fittest, but like the fact that, this branch of the bird family tree did really well.
Yeah.
And so they made more offspring, and that offspring learned from the parents. But I don't know if you knew this, but migratory birds don't travel with chicks.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, they don't. This is completely, there's no way to explain how they would know this without the idea of a higher power, just some sort of supernatural conveyance.
Yeah, being able to give them this ability to know, I need to go down to this beach and eat these birds.
Yeah, while I'm happen to just be flying right over this in my normal path that my parents didn't teach me to, but I somehow know.
Yeah, and guess what? The Bible gives us an answer for that too. Matthew 6:26, Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount says, "Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them." And this is a great quote. Are you not much or worth much more than they? So like Jesus is not only giving us an intelligent design argument here, implicitly, he's not explicitly doing it, but somebody had to design this to happen, the birds to be like this, for them to have those horseshoe crabs. And then it just shows us how much more valuable we are to God than those things. The question is how they got that instinct. It had to come from an intelligent designer. There's so much that we could say about this, but we'll probably move on from here. Let's talk about the final one, and that's the moral argument. We did the very first episode on absolute truth, and how that relativism has its weakness, and absolute truth is absolute, is objective, and there's proof for it. This one is similar, but we're going to talk a little differently, and it'll be briefer. But this one states that objective moral laws demand a moral lawgiver that transcends humans. Now, if you're an atheist, you do not believe that. You might somehow, but if you're a true atheist or an agnostic, you do not believe that objective morals demand a moral lawgiver. Now, there are different people out there. I mean, if you talk to atheists, some of them believe in objective morals. Other ones say there's not. For the ones that believe there are objective morals, they just believe that it comes from humans. And we'll talk about why there's a problem with that in just a moment. Others just don't think there's any objectivity to morality. And yet when you talk to them, eventually they'll get to admitting, okay, there are objective morals. So I think deep down inside, every atheist believes there are objective morals. since there are objective morals, that means there has to be a moral lawgiver that transcends us. Now, let's first talk about what objective morals are. That means that those are things that are always right or always wrong. So, murder, it's always wrong. Lying, rape, those are always wrong. It's never right to tell a lie. Now, you could argue situation ethics, but that is not biblical. That is not moral. It is not right to murder. It is not right to lie. It is not right to rape. They're always wrong. On the other hand, telling the truth is always right. Being selfless, that's always right. Keeping promises that don't violate objective morals, that's always right. Being a person of your word. There are a lot of people that say these things don't exist, this objectivity. What was you going to say?
So sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
There's a guy that I've seen in a lot of videos. His name, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. But I think he's in the denominational world, but his name's Cliff Nechle.
Mm-hmm.
Knechtle. German, I don't know how to pronounce that. And so he always has a lot of really good arguments for these very things, objective morality, the cosmological and the teleological arguments.
Mm-hmm.
He's excellent at being able to, like, he has these debates on college campuses just between whoever really wants to come up and just talk about it. And he does a lot of work on the moral thing there. And it's talking about how basically if there's no God, and there's people who are going to twist this, and I'll talk to that in a second. But if there's no God and there's no sort of moral lawgiver, I can do whatever I want and be justified because it's according to mine.
Mm-hmm.
But then people will say, if you need the Bible to tell you not to rape, you need to be checked.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it's really, that is the slippery slope that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I can be like, oh, well, I find it okay to do ABC, and it's stuff that people would say is harmless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people would be like, okay, all right, yeah, you can do that. It's your truth, right? You can do whatever you want.
Uh-huh.
And then you start being like, oh, well, if I can do this and it's according to my own moral code, then who's to say when your moral code is not up to par and by what scale?
Yeah.
It's just such a weird, slippery slope that doesn't really make any sense because they'll usually go to ending up like, oh, okay, there is an objective, but it's determined by generally, I think they'll just generally say majority rules.
Majority rules.
Because, everybody knows this is bad. So then there we go. Well, everybody thought women voting was wrong.
We'll have a problem with that in just a moment because we'll see in just a moment how that doesn't always work. So there are two options. Well, three options. Either objective morals come from humans. It's our own opinion. It's our own thoughts and desires. It either comes from a society or a group of people, or it comes from a higher being. Charles Darwin, this is what he'd said. This is coming from one of his books. A man who has no assured and ever-present belief in the existence of a personal God or of a future existence with retribution and reward can have for his rule of life, as far as I can see, only to follow those impulses and instincts which are strongest or which seem to him the best ones. Now, we'll talk a little bit about this in just a moment, but that's what he says. I want to attack that in following your instincts and impulses in just a moment. But that's basically true. If there is no God, just follow whatever you think's right. Yeah. Jeffrey Dahmer, in an interview, actually said that he didn't believe there was a God when he was committing all those murders. He grew up an atheist, so he thought, well, if there's no God, I'm not going to be judged, so I'll just follow my impulses and instincts. So
that's the logical conclusion of that line of thought.
There's some severe issues with that. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Then there's the option of society or a nation. I don't know, was the majority of the world on, my history is terrible right now.
What's it?
Was the majority of the world on Germany's side in World War II?
Well, at first.
Yeah.
The majority, Axis and Allies were pretty evenly split because Russia kind of tipped the scale towards the Allies, I think. So I think population-wise, if you count the government actually does represent the people. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I think allies did have more, but it was still a large chunk.
It was a large chunk. Well, it's not really majority most of the time. It's like, well, if this society says it's okay, then that's the people living in that society. That's their moral code. Well, there's a severe issue with that kind of thinking. I like what Thomas Warren, and I'll actually put that in the link tree as well. Thomas Warren debated Antony Flew. I'm going to type this in really quick so I won't forget it. I would encourage you to watch this. This is an excellent debate. Thomas Warren had given him true or false questions and some yes or no questions and stuff like that before the debate, which I thought was really good. He asked him, did value, and he's talking about morals, did value exist before or after the first human? So Flew said after. And then he asked him, did Nazi Germany commit real objective evil against mankind by torturing them and brutally exterminating them? Now, that's not word for word, but it's seemingly what he asked. And Flew said, yes, they did commit real objective evil. So Warren then pointed out okay, if morals existed after the first human, then morality is merely just a function of the human mind. And if that's true, then Nazi Germany, they were only following what they thought was right.
Yeah.
So they couldn't have committed real objective evil. Yeah. And so he was pointing out to Flew that you've got some severe issues, because if morality comes from human beings, Nazi Germany could not have committed real objective evil. But no nice atheist out there, no good-hearted person is going to admit that. Actually, incidentally, some have. I actually was talking to an atheist and trying to ask her where moral law comes from. And she said it comes from the heart. And I said, well, okay, then, blah, blah. I made the argument about Adolf Hitler. And I pressed her hard on it. And she finally admitted in front of everyone, I mean, everybody could hear this. She said, fine, Hitler was good. Because I was trying to point out to her, if morality comes from the human heart, then we all get to make our own decisions. You can't call Hitler evil. You'd have to call him good.
Yeah, he's just following his heart.
Yeah.
Because they had, in Nazi Germany, because not all of the citizenry were on board with this, and a lot of them didn't know about it until the end.
Mm-hmm.
But who told them that was wrong when they found out?
Yeah.
They knew it, even if they weren't religious. They're like, that's horrible. That's an objectionable thing.
Yeah.
Or objectionable. I think I used the wrong word there, but
that's okay.
But even so, the Nazis that were in power that caused the Holocaust, caused all these horrible things that they did it because they had supposed grievances with the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, this is retribution for whatever delusion they thought that they did.
Yeah.
And then they acted on that and did those horrible things in that name of some sort of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get, that's what you end up with.
That's true. I think I know why Flew was afraid to say objective morals existed prior to mankind, because if he admitted that would point to a moral lawgiver.
Yeah.
That would mean, moral law existed before mankind. That means and eventually he actually did admit there is some sort of God out there. He didn't go to the God of the Bible, but yeah. Every reasonable atheist out there believes in real objective morals. If you reason with them, they ultimately do.
Yeah. It's inborn, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We come with
some way. I mean,
in some way
have those disorders.
We come with this sense of morality, but that sense can't come from us originally. And there's a reason why. Here's the question they have then. Can't we be moral without God? As you said earlier, somebody says, if I need the Bible to tell me rape is wrong, then, I need to be checked. Okay. Well, then can we overall be moral without God and know the difference between right and wrong? Now, many people believe we can be, that we don't need God. We don't need the Bible. They'll say, I know I don't need to murder someone without the Bible telling me so. But there is a severe issue with that. Now, I'm taking this back to Darwin's quote about following whatever our instincts and our impulses are. Let me give you this scenario. And this is realistic. I mean, these things happen in the world. Let's say there's this man's family. They're brutally tortured. Let's say even the wife is raped in front of him. The children are even, that happens to them. I mean, that's horrible to think about. Let's say that happens. And then the guy murders all of them except him. And something happens and the killer gets away. the man is left to, I mean, I don't even know what he'd go through. I couldn't even understand that. But later on, he runs into the killer at the grocery store. He's out trying to get some milk or something, you know, still grieving, and he sees the killer there. What do you think his instincts and his impulses would tell him to do?
Oh, do the same thing to him.
Yeah, that's I know. As a I'm a father now. I'm if you're listening, I'm having a baby in August. Woo. Now that I'm a father and I'm a husband, I've been a husband for a while. I became a husband before a father. That's usually the ideal way of doing it. Me, I know personally, my instincts and impulses would be rip this guy's head off. That's how I would feel. I would want to tear him limb from limb. I would want him to suffer the way I've suffered. My instincts and impulses would say, take revenge on that man and do the same thing to him. Even go twain, you know, don't go a mile, go twain on him. Yeah. If that's a new quote. I would maybe even have this instinct and impulses to do the same thing to his family, possibly. Yeah. I don't know.
That's probably where a lot of people would fall.
Yeah. But moral law, what does moral law tell me to do?
Well, where does moral law come from?
It comes from God.
It comes from God. Moral law tells you to forgive that man.
Yeah. Moral law says call the cops.
Yeah. Call the cops. Let the court decide legally, but like morally, you're supposed to forgive him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, will we?
I can't say. Yeah, let me make that clear.
Yeah,
I'm not a holier than thou kind of person. I am not going to say that I wouldn't take revenge.
Yeah,
I don't know. I shouldn't, and I hope I wouldn't. Being in that situation is completely different, and we're told in the Bible, "Don't think you're above temptation." I think that's Galatians 6:1. If any man is spiritual, don't paraphrasing, but don't think more of yourself than you are. You know, be humble. I probably butchered that, but. Instincts say take revenge. Moral law says don't take revenge. Instead, forgive him. That's bizarre. Like to the world today, that is bizarre to say that. But that is Jesus. That is God's word. Our instincts and impulses can lead us down really dark paths. It can lead us to destruction. It can lead us to so many things. Yeah, maybe I don't need a Bible to tell me necessarily that rape is wrong, but things like revenge, things like murder, lying, cheating. Where do we draw the line on those things? You know, we need a higher law than us to tell us this is what we do.
So you remember in the Sermon on the Mount, Christ tells us to forgive others, you know, turn the cheek and all of that. He references a code of laws that was made in Babylon. I think it was Babylon, Hammurabi.
Oh yeah, the code of Hammurabi.
He was Babylonian, wasn't he?
I think he was.
Syrian? I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah.
But the Hammurabi code was exactly what he referenced, and that's a man-made code that they made up, which was literally eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Whatever you do to someone else is going to be due to you. That's great in theory, you know. But then you get to well, this man killed my wife. I'm going to kill him. And then his brother is like, oh, that guy killed my brother. I'm going to kill him. And so I get killed. And then you, if you're a good enough friend, you'll be like, okay, I'll go kill him.
Yeah. Oh my,
you know, until everybody's dead. And if you go by any sort of moral scale other than God's, you're just going to have problem after problem.
You are. I agree. And No, go ahead. Continue.
Well, it's just that there's no bad logical end to the morals given to us in the Bible. If you forgive somebody, like, especially in cases of murder, you see this so often. There was a certain court case where there was a grisly murder, like you said. Also, the situation you described. Have you ever seen the movie Law Abiding Citizen?
I feel like I have a long time ago.
Gerard Butler.
I might have watched it on VidAngel a while back.
Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx.
I think I have seen that. Yeah,
that describes exactly what you're talking about. And then he started taking retribution. He started becoming like a weird revolutionary. But anyway. There was a horrible court case where there was a grisly murder of somebody, and every person in this person's family was like talking to the accused after he'd been proven guilty and just slanging what you would imagine, you know, things that you would want to say to like your daughter's murderer or your wife's murderer or something like that. These horrible things. And then one man comes up. It's a big, good old boy. He had like suspenders on, big beard. And then he just gets up there and he says, I forgive you. Like, I want to say all these things. I want to do what you did to my daughter to you, but I forgive you because that's what God wants me. And
There you go.
that man, like the convict, he broke down. He
Mhm.
was cut to the heart, literally. Like, I guarantee you, I don't know what happened after that,
Yeah,
but that had an impact.
I'd say it did.
That would really, like, because if I did something horrible, like, well, actually, I have done many horrible things. You have too, and
Oh,
then
we
somebody
have,
looked
yeah.
at me and said, "You're forgiven." That was Christ.
Yeah, yeah,
But that just has such an impact that you don't get with the Hammurabi Code, with vengeance, with all these human man-made moral laws.
yeah. Instincts and impulses build bitterness and hatred and,
Yeah.
and strife and wars and
Mhm.
all kinds of just nonsense. Jesus, if everyone would follow his law, it would create perfect peace in the world. Now, we don't
Absolutely.
because we're humans and
Yep.
we mess up. But if we just follow Jesus, we wouldn't have all of this. And Jesus, you pulled this up, and I want to bring, oh, yeah, here it is, the Good Samaritan parable. I see this guy on the side of the road. He's beat up, bloody, fell among thieves. Maybe instincts and impulses would tell me, hey, this could be a trap. Maybe he's faking this so the thieves can jump out and get me. Or man, he's going to be a burden on me. He's going to be expensive. I bet he's there because he's a drug addict. I bet he did that. Oh man. Now somebody says, I wouldn't think that way. Well, a lot of us do. I have those impulses a lot of times with people like in a situation similar to this, but moral law says, you know what? Stop and take care of the guy. He needs your help. If something bad happens, okay, that just happens.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Because you're suffering for the sake of Christ.
So
for the sake of doing good.
And that takes us to this passage in Matthew 5, the one you just brought up in Matthew 5:38 through 48. I know this is long, but it says, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, he's obviously not only doing what you just mentioned about the Code of Hammurabi, but he's also talking about the wrong interpretation of the Old Testament. That was basically like governmental judicial decisions. If you shed man's blood, you're going to stand before a court and your blood will be shed. It wasn't about taking revenge on people, but they used that passage to take revenge on people. So Jesus is correcting them and saying, but I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Now, I don't think he's talking about self-defense. He's talking about taking revenge. Somebody insults you, insult him back. No, turn the other cheek. Some guy comes up to you and slaps you in the face just randomly. Say, would you like to hit the other one? Like, I couldn't imagine. I'd like to think I would do that, but I don't know. This is not talking about self-defense. It's talking about just, you know what? You get insulted. Somebody hurts your feelings. Don't try to take revenge.
And we see the instances of laying down your life for someone else.
Yeah.
That would be in the case of not necessarily somebody has a gun to your head, like do this or I'll do this. It's in the case of, okay, somebody needs to die, so I'll die for you.
Yeah.
But then in this case, if somebody is about to like kill somebody else, then yeah, you have grounds to kill them. Or at least at the very least stop them.
You're saving their life. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is
That's
obviously
a very
different
situation.
And then Jesus says, if anyone wants to sue you, this is verse 40, and take your shirt, let him have your coat also. Verse 41, if you've watched the recent Chosen episode, you know this passage very well now. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him too. You want to bring up that situation?
Yes, I loved that because I've never really, because when it was about to happen, I was like, I wonder if they're about to do this. Because they are compelling them to go 1 mile, because that was apparently a Roman law that a Roman soldier could make a Jewish citizen walk 1 mile and carry their stuff for them. And so I guarantee you that's what he's actually referencing.
Yeah.
I hope that is an actual law. I'd like to really look into that.
I want to look into it too.
Yeah. And so like they're stopped on the road and the soldiers ask Christ and his apostles, of course, this is the Chosen. It may not have actually happened, but it's not counter biblical, and force them to carry their stuff 1 mile. And then after that, they're like, okay, let's keep going. Yeah, we'll carry your stuff even further for you. And then you kind of see that's a form of compassion. It's returning good for evil. And then that really changes the way somebody A looks at you and B looks at their behavior.
Yeah, I mean, the Roman soldiers in that look at them, they're like,
They're like,
are you guys crazy? You know what? We're feeling bad
I feel
now.
really
Here,
bad.
here, we'll take your armor back. Yeah. And I think it was Jesus who started that, because the apostles want to stop, and Jesus is like, hey, we got another mile to go. Let's go. And so they're just like, what? Jesus is bizarre. I mean, compared to the world, he's insane to the world. I mean, that's insane to do stuff like that. But if we just listen to moral law, it's going to be not only life-changing for us, it'll actually change the actions of others. And then he says, verse 42, give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now that's what the world says. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be the sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you only greet your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. So, instincts and impulses, let's say that someone makes me really mad, like let's say somebody, not a member of the church, they talk really bad about me, they slander me, they curse me up and down, they just do some horrible things to me. Instincts and impulses say, you know what, just have nothing to do with them, don't pray for them, hate them as much as possible, try to ruin their life. Moral law tells me, hey, it's their birthday in a couple of days, send them a card, tell them, been thinking about you and I love you. It's like, what? That's weird. Well, it could change their life.
Yeah.
And if we stop being selfish, that's what instincts and impulses teach us to do, to be selfish. But moral law says, no, it's not about you. It's about others.
Yeah.
And that's why we need a moral lawgiver.
Yeah.
If it's just us, again, it's destruction and chaos.
Yeah, we're doomed.
So that's the moral argument in a nutshell, which that wasn't a nutshell. That was a lot, but
it's a big nut.
Yeah.
Big nut to crack.
It proves it, that if there are objective morals, that means there's an objective moral lawgiver, and we cannot exist morally without God. Although we, in a sense, come with morality, meaning we come with some sense of things, but we need someone above us teaching us the right way, or we're going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Lord of the Flies. That's what
there we go.
Because
there we go.
You don't have, it's the same principle. That may not happen with actual kids,
Mhm.
but if you are raised without somebody to teach you, then you're going to have some weird misconceptions.
Yep, very good. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think anyone's experimented this, but if you were to put people on an island, and try to feed them, keep them alive, but don't teach them anything, what are they going to turn out to be? Savages, probably.
Yeah. They'll probably worship you.
Yeah, they're
if
going
you're the one doing it.
Yeah, they're going to turn out to be some crazy folks. So we need that moral law. Well, that's the three arguments: the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, and the moral argument. If you are an atheist, reach out and we'll talk about this more. But if you're a Christian, think about these things and study them and deepen your faith, because you need a true faith in God, because Christianity is constantly under attack, not only in universities and schools, but it's in our homes, it's through our TVs, it's on social media. There is so much in the world today trying to get us to not believe in God. So we need to deepen our faith. And actually, in the continuing episodes, I don't think I'm going to do the existence of God the whole time, but in the next few episodes, we're going to talk about some arguments against God, like alleged contradictions of the Bible and so forth. So hopefully we'll be prepared for those. But that's a wrap for today, Mitchell. I appreciate you doing this with me, man.
Absolutely. I love doing this. Love just talking about stuff.
All right. Well,
if you couldn't tell.
All right. It's going to be a good season. Thank you all for listening, and take care of yourselves.
Good one.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of a Study in Truth podcast. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on social media, or you can reach us at astudyintruth92@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate our show.